I see that we are still adding folks, but it's 8:34, and I think we can get things underway. Welcome everybody to the Midwest Contact Center Association webinar. We're super excited about our speaker today, and I'll let Scott introduce him. Just a couple of housekeeping issues. First of all, our goal at the MWCCA is to be a trusted source of resources for you. Obviously, the main thing that we want to do is to provide local opportunities to connect with your peers, to be able to share, to be able to network, and obviously none of us are able to do that in any significant way right now. But what we can do is still continue to bring resources to you that are valuable, and give you some kind of go-to sources of information where we're not trying to sell something to you. We don't have an agenda other than best practices. And so thanks so much for coming. There is an ability for you to ask questions, and we're going to reserve kind of the last 15 minutes or so for Q&A. So there's a Q&A button that should be down at the bottom. If you have those, the panelists will be able to see those, and we can chat about those at the end of the presentation. So just go ahead and send those out. And there's also a chat feature that only the panelists will be able to see as well. So if you'd like to communicate or bring specific questions up, please do that. In the meantime, please watch the MWCCA site, and we have a host of speakers that we are going to continue to put on the calendar here for the rest of the year. But for now, Scott, why don't you go ahead and introduce Kit for us?
Absolutely. Welcome, everyone, and welcome, Kit. It's my pleasure to introduce Kit. Kit grew up in southern Minnesota, close to my parents' upbringing towns, and grew up on a hog farm. Started talking when he was born, but his parents decided to hold him back until he was 9 years old, where he started talking and speaking at 4-H events. At 21, he purchased a manufacturing company, was very successful, became CEO, and served as chairman of the board for 3 other manufacturing companies in 3 different states. I guess they only allow Kit to have 1 manufacturing per state. He received his bachelor's and master's degree in speech communications and business administration. And in 1991, he started Welchlin Communication Strategies, and has done seminars on stress and provided speeches across the country. With the COVID-19, it's made him pretty much stationary in his home and his home studio, but he's providing speeches throughout the country for private and public organizations. He's delivered probably more than 3,500 speeches and seminars to more than 500,000 people in the last 29 years. So you can back that up and you can determine how old Kit actually is. He holds certifications from he's a certified speaker, professional speaker Hall of Fame in Minnesota, and many, many other accolades. But probably the most important one he got when he got to throw the first pitch out at the MWCCA event at the Twin Stadium. He practiced for months until he realized that TC Bear had a mitt that was the size of a bushel basket. But he threw a nice strike, and everyone was excited and cheering, and it actually, I think, rattled the Yankees that day, so we rallied and won that game. So way to go, Kit. So with that, please join me in welcoming our good friend, Kit Welchlin.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you for that introduction. I should have you do all my voiceovers and introductions in the future. I didn't realize there was a couple of things I was going to have to clarify after that introduction, but I'm going to take a minute to do that. Welcome, everyone. Great to be back working with the Midwest Contact Center Association. Last time I worked with you was at the Twins game nearly 2 years ago. And when Scott mentioned that I began talking, actually I began public speaking at the age of 9 in 4-H. And that wasn't out of desire, that was out of necessity. When I grew up on that hog and dairy farm in southern Minnesota, I was the youngest of 4 sons, no sisters. And I grew up in a position-centered family, not a person-centered family where everyone would have an equal say or an equal vote. No, there was a true hierarchy in the family where my dad had the most authority, then my mom, and then it went from oldest to youngest, and I was the youngest. So what would happen around the dining room table is my dad would say something, then my mom would say something, then Cabot, Kelly, Corey, and then they changed the subject. And I always had a terrible time getting into the conversation. But in 4-H, I could get up in front of a club once a month and give a 5 or 10-minute speech without introduction, and well, really haven't stopped since. But you know, according to the Book of Lists, public speaking sometimes ranks as high as #1 as the most stressful event we find ourselves in. And I try to put myself in that situation about 110 times a year. So I really do practice what I preach when it comes to this topic. And this is the topic that I'm presenting most often. And sometimes it's a combination of change and stress and how to modify our communication to deal with the dynamics of the pandemic of COVID-19. Some organizations were better prepared in a way with their technology for such an event. Other organizations had quite a struggle for a couple of months to get back on their feet. And now they're struggling with getting people to come back to work or what the new normal is going to be like. So I'm going to sprinkle in a little bit of a discussion about change because that's probably what we are really dealing with when it comes to stress, because if we can't manage the stress, we're not going to be able to manage the change. So we want to become great leaders that appear to be cool, calm, and collected and manage our stress and share those strategies with the people we work with. So if we can manage the stress, we'll think more clearly and probably make better decisions. So we're going to talk a little bit about the dance between change and stress, and then we'll talk about the 3 stages of stress, the 3 stages of burnout. Then we'll talk about 15 physical remedies to reduce stress, 15 psychological strategies to reduce stress, and I threw in a few bonus strategies just this morning. So you're going to have a wide variety of remedies and strategies to manage stress, because I don't think the changes and the stress is over yet when it comes to COVID-19. So let's go ahead and get started. One of the questions is, what is stress? That's a pretty good question. What stress is simply is wear and tear caused by life. Now, according to the research by Dr. Leonard Hayflick, the human body does have the biological potential to live to about 135 years. But we don't find very many people living into their 110s, 120s, or 130s. And one of the main reasons is because of stress. So we start out with a biological potential of 135 years, and then we start to have this wear, tear, erosion, or corrosion caused by life. For instance, my oldest brother, Cabot, had the whooping cough. When he was a child, my parents claimed they nearly lost him. So he starts out with a biological potential of 135 years. He gets the whooping cough. He's down to 130 years. Maybe when we were going through adolescence, self-esteem was low, stress was high. Now we're down from 130 years down to 125 years. Or maybe in our late teens or early 20s, we got involved in some racy relationships. Now we're down from 125 down to 120. Or maybe we bought a small manufacturing company when we were 21, and now we're down to 58 or so. So it's some of those choices we make in life that create the stress and the wear and tear and erosion or corrosion. But sometimes it isn't a choice. Sometimes it's a pandemic. Sometimes it's a big shift in technology. Sometimes something comes and broadsides us, and we have to figure out a better way to respond rather than react so we don't drive away our talent. So one of those elements is change, and there's typically 3 key drivers of change. Technology, and you may have been dealing with some big technological shifts and how we help people work remotely. It might be interviewing remotely. I mean, it's been quite a change with technology and how we communicate, just like this, where something that was very rare that I gave webinars from my home office. Now I've delivered, nearly 30 of them in the last 3 months. So it's quite a change. So whether I wanted to do this or not, well, just need to do this for our customers' sake. So change is external. It's sometimes a decision made in Washington, D.C. or your state capital. It's a change in regulations. It's a change OSHA standards. And we have to figure out a way to respond most effectively. So when it comes to change, that's physical, it's external, we may not have any control, but transition's more personal, it's more internal, it's more psychological. It's how we adjust, how we adapt. dealing with the anxiety, dealing with the frustration, dealing with the concern, the worry. And so we have to figure out a better way to manage these 4 stages of change and transition. So the first is transition starts with an ending. Problem is we really don't like endings. You know, it's kind of nice 90 days or so when we came to work, we kind of plug and play. We knew exactly what we were doing. We were confident, we were competent. And then all of a sudden pandemic, you know, and everything needed to be kind of turned upside down and turned inside out. And we had to figure out new ways to still provide our services to our clients. And then managing the neutral zone, where we can't go back to the way things used to be, not sure how they're going to be. And so we're going to have this new normal, you know, even with teams. You know, it used to be forming, storming, norming, performing. Now we're renorming, and now we're informing, and now we're training. And sometimes we have that available 24 hours a day. You know, when I was listening to the Tim Montgomery presentation last week, they're talking about fail, fast, and learn, and talking about how we need to have access and training materials for people to study on their own, to do it remotely. And that's maybe an option that you might have to consider. So I think even, you know, after the pandemic is over and most people's fears, you know, have kind of subsided, you know, this new normal is still going to be, you know, a lot of adjustment, systems in flex, and a lot of fail fast and learn is what's going to be coming. But in different elements and different areas and different departments and different processes and procedures, we still have to launch a new beginning, maybe incremental stages, incremental steps. But we have to be kind of all in at a certain point. But, you know, that's always kind of a gamble too, because it might not work, or might not work as well as we hope for a while. And of course, boom, you know, more stress. But what we're really working on today is taking care of ourselves. So we know that transition starts with an ending. We don't like that. We go into a neutral zone. It's kind of nighttime between yesterday and tomorrow. And then we figure out ways we're going to launch new beginnings or put new processes or procedures in place and take care of ourselves. Seems pretty simple, but there's some mistakes we make with change. And that is, some people join the anti-change crowd. They decide simply not to change. I learned this a long time ago growing up on the farm. It's a lot easier to ride the horse in the direction it's headed. I don't know if you've ever been on a horse that wants to go back to the barn. It's going back to the barn. It's an 800-pound animal. All you have is a bit and bridle. The more you slap it on the ears and cuss and swear, more likely it's going to scrape you off on a tree or the barn door on the way in. And when our industry has had to change, or when technology has changed, you know, sometimes you just have to ride the horse in the direction it's headed, you know. And so if we don't, it creates a lot more tension and stress. Some people act like a victim. They throw a pity party. They invite other people to attend. They talk about how hopeless it seems and how helpless they feel. That doesn't make us very attractive as a coworker or leader. Some people try to control the uncontrollable. We're going to talk about that with stress management. But Covey always talked about these 4 areas of life, what he called the circle of concern. One is employment, and when that's affected, of course, that takes us by surprise and causes us stress. So if I lose my job, I might lose my house. So property, even a natural disaster, flame or fire, breaks our heart to see people's lives swept away. So if I lose my job, lose my house, what will people think? Reputation is very important, and we've all known people with a great reputation, and one dumb decision, one dumb act, and it all disappears. And the first thing we ask is, what were they thinking? Because once you tarnish that reputation, it'll never be the same. People always remember that one time. So if we worry about employment, we worry about property, we worry about our reputation, of course, it's going to affect our health. And if we lose our health, we'll lose everything. So we got to really focus on what we can do something about and how we can make some adjustments to those things we can't. Being cautious, sometimes we're so cautious, we freeze like a deer in the headlights, and reality hits. You gotta keep moving. Sometimes we're a little bit afraid of the unknown, which seems kind of silly, because you're creating the future. You have the job, you have the position, you're working with the technology, you're in the conversations, you're in the virtual meetings, and you're creating the future. I don't know really why we should be afraid of it. Some people make a big deal out of little things, major attention to minor problems. I had a business mentor in the 80s that used to call this pole vaulting over mouse turds. You better make sure if you're going to throw a great big fit about something, that it really is important, that it isn't petty. You don't want to stake your career on the little things. You want to stake your career on the big ideas. And then psychologically disengaging from our work. And that's self-talk. You're thinking, I have to, or I must do this, or I should do this. That's not very motivating. I get to, I want to, I look forward to. Changes our attitude, changes our actions. And some people try to get all the answers and try to get all the directions, but they're still making it up in Washington, D.C., or your state capital, or your county or parish, or and your mayor and city council. So ooh, we're just going to have to be nimble. We're going to have to be quite flexible. And then finally, failing to manage the stress. And that's why we're here. We're going to talk about that quite a bit. So what is stress? Yep, wear and tear caused by life. Often it's change. Even the changes we want create stress. I know I could lose about 10 pounds, but then I'd have to give some stuff up. I'd have to work out a little bit more, exercise a little bit more, eat a little bit better, and so, I have to make some adjustments and give up some of the things I enjoy. So even the changes we want can create stress. But stress attacks us in two fronts. It's a physical state and a psychological state. And that's why we're going to talk about physical remedies and psychological strategies. Physically, we get tired, and psychologically, we tend to worry. Now, the problem with worry is the mind has a hard time telling the difference between what is real or what is well imagined. So when you worry about whether or not you set enough money aside to retire comfortably, even though you're not retiring right now, kicks us into a stress response. When you worry about whether or not you set enough money aside to get the kids through college, even though they're in grade school, or you're the last couple of months helping them with their school, which is quite stressful too. We're going to talk about recalibrating work and life balance. And so the mind has a hard time telling the difference between what is real and what is well imagined. Now, the good news is, according to the Nightingale Foundation, about 40% of what we worry about never happens. About 40% never happens. About 30% of what we worry about already has happened. We just wish it wasn't this way. We just haven't taken a big old dose of acceptance. There is a pandemic. We are working differently. We are interacting differently. So, we just haven't really, embraced it. About 12% of what we worry about are needless healthcare concerns. Am I going to get cancer like my mom, a heart disease like my dad? It really comes down to being well-fed, well-rested, well-exercised. The rest is faith. About 10% of what we worry about is petty. That's the day we don't like how our hair looks. Isn't that funny? That's the day we get the most compliments about our hair. People say, wow, I like your hair like that. Really? I thought about shaving it all off before I got on the Zoom call. And so that leaves a whopping 8%. About 8% of what we worry about, wow, we should be worried about. The problem is trying to figure out which 8% that is. Now, Mark Twain used to put it this way. Imagine 10 troubles rolling down the road at you like tires. Can you imagine that? 10 troubles rolling down the road at you like tires. Probably 9 will roll in the ditch before they ever get to you. We tend to worry about a lot of things that simply never happen, but it creates stress. Now, there's 3 stages of stress that we should be able to see coming. First stage of stress is the alarm stage. And you may have woken, had an alarm clock, or your phone chiming this morning, or music blaring in the bedroom, so we become alarmed. And then we go into the response stage, fight or flight. We either hit the showers and get ready for the call, or we hit snooze and try to get 10 more minutes to sleep. And no matter how well or how poorly our day goes, we're going to be exhausted. Now, that's a quick trip through the stress response. But this is something we inherited from our ancestors 50, 60,000 years ago. Imagine I was your ancestor, Harry Cave Dweller, and I'm outside my cave this beautiful day with my beautiful wife, Harriet, and we've snagged some sort of rabbit, rodent, have a little fire there, going to have a little red meat in our diet, and we're making our dinner, and all of a sudden in front of our cave there jumps a mountain lion. Wow, we become alarmed. Adrenaline's pumped into the system, blood sugars are released, my heart starts to pound, I start to pant, I have constriction of blood flow to my extremities, so if I'm bitten in battle or lacerate my feet running through the jungle, I won't bleed to death. But I also change psychologically. I look for points of vulnerability, weaknesses, areas that I can attack. I don't look at that mountain lion and think, wow, what a beautiful coat of hair. No, I'm thinking about break its jaw, break its paw. And whether I wrestled that big old pussycat to the ground or run through the jungle until I was safe, according to Dr. Ken Dykewald, our ancestors would literally lay down and sleep 20 to 40 hours before they'd be back to homeostasis, the condition they were in physically and psychologically, before the mountain lion jumped in front of the cave. Now, if that same old survival mechanism is kicking in today, and it is, what's the problem with that equation? Well, we're not getting the 20 to 40 hours of sleep every day. It's usually pretty funny. I don't know. I can't see you, so I don't know if it was funny, if that landed today or not. But we become exhausted. And it can lead to burnout. And I'll tell you what, burnout isn't pretty. If you truly do become burned out, it's not something you recover from some long weekends through the summer or over the holidays. If you truly do become burned out, according to the research by Dr. K.W. Center, it can take 2 to 4 years to recover from burnout. And I've never had anyone ever come up to me and say, oh, Kit, the years I was burned out, those are the best years of my life. No, they're the longest days of our life. And I'm sure over the last 90 days, you've had friends and colleagues say to you, wow, today was the longest 2 weeks of my life. So with the stress that we've had with the pandemic and all the changes we've made at work and then our home life, man, it's a lot to absorb. So these are the 3 stages of burnout. First stage of burnout is physical fatigue. Now, sometimes it can be a knot in our neck, a headache in our temple, kind of lose our appetite. Mine is, I get a knot on the left side of my neck, headache in my left temple. I don't know if that's just my stress response or because a brother threw a hay bale on my head 40 years ago, but that's it. Knot in my neck, headache and left temple. My wife gets a bellyache. So I can be crawling on the floor because I have a headache. I won't notice she has a bellyache because it's a different symptom. But for burnout, most of the time we'll recognize it that we're very tired, profound exhaustion. You might have a favorite TV program you like to watch at 7 o'clock at night, and you start watching that TV show, and the next thing you realize, you wake up, it's 1:30 in the morning, there's an infomercial on selling cookware, and you grab the remote control and shut off the TV and head down the hallway to get a few more hours of sleep. You're exhausted. Second stage of burnout is psychological fatigue, and I abbreviate that psycho because it's different for each and every one of us. Some people get grumpy, some people get grouchy, some people go looking for a fight, some people withdraw from relationships. My wife claims that when I hit psychological fatigue, I get touchy. Can you imagine that, me getting touchy? I don't get touchy. I go into denial. I say, I'm not touchy, you're touchy. But my wife thinks I'm being touchy. But for almost every one of us, we'll suffer from something called mindlessness or thoughtlessness. And I think the best way to tell you've hit this stage of burnout is if you're driving down the road, running an errand, and you're going to go take a certain exit. Next thing you know, you're 2 miles down the road, you missed your exit. Or you walk into a room, you can't remember why you walked into that room. At this point, according to OSHA, 16 days a year of work lost. Physical fatigue, people get sick. Psychological fatigue because people get hurt. And then spiritual fatigue is a sense of hopelessness, helplessness, thoughts of escape, don't feel competent on the job anymore, not winking at yourself in the mirror anymore. You don't want to deal with your customers or internal customers or coworkers anymore. Sick of it, sick of it. And I think the best way to tell you've hit spiritual fatigue is if you're watching one of those TV shows that's a bunch of stories about people that have run away to another part of the country for 5 or 10 years. And as you're watching that TV show, you're wondering if you could do that. Could you just run away for 5 or 10 years and just take cash? Credit cards and checks are too easy to trace. Just take all the cash you can find. Now, it seems silly we'd call this burnout. I mean, who doesn't get tired every once in a while? I agree. Who doesn't get grumpy or grouchy every once in a while? I agree. And who doesn't lose hope every once in a while? Yeah, I agree. But if you truly do become burned out, you might miss out in the best 2 to 4 years of your life, or with your parents, or with your kids. So I don't want you to become burned out. So there's 3 questions we need to ask and 3 questions we need to answer in the next half hour or so. One of those, how well are we avoiding unnecessary stress? What can we sidestep? Are there certain individuals? Are there certain issues that maybe we can avoid for a certain period of time that cause stress? Are there certain settings or certain circumstances where we could be more, collaborative or rather than competitive? But can we take a look at our calendar and take a look at those episodes or those triggers that cause us stress and figure out a way how we can minimize the damage? How well can we avoid any unnecessary stress? Then how well are we responding to unavoidable stress, the stress that comes with our personal and professional lives? So we've had to deal with a lot of changes professionally, and we had to deal with a lot of changes personally. So whether you lived alone and you feel that isolation, if you've been working remotely, or if you have a house full of kids and they had school work and you're trying to figure out the new math and then you're trying to do your career at the same time, and how do we balance all of that? So how well are we responding to unavoidable stress, just the life cycle of being a human being? And then how well are we practicing good health? Are we well fed, well rested, and well exercised? So when it comes to recalibrating work and life balance, we have to figure out what controls our time. So when we feel like we have a certain amount of control, it helps minimize the stress. So we have to think about what are those tasks or activities in which we have total control. And there aren't very many. One is our attitude. And so we can read something to put us in the right frame of mind, kind of manage our own morale. It could be what we eat. I don't know about you, but I've never accidentally eaten anything. So I know if I have a big lunch, I'll be kind of sleepy in the afternoon. But if I eat something lighter at lunch, I'm a little peppier in the afternoon. So our attitude, how we respond rather than react. I don't know if you're like me, but I spend most of my time biting my tongue. It's crazy in here, and I'm always amazed what little bit of that I share with other people. Probably what we wear, I know if I dress more professionally, act more professionally, so it has a little impact on me. And what we say, I guess, and how much sleep we get. And there's all sorts of information online of how to improve your ability to get a good night's rest. So those are tasks and activities we have total control, or at least some control, and that's everything else in our life. We just need to take some of that control back. We need to figure out how to delegate or how to disperse some of those activities to minimize the stress. Somebody else might actually enjoy that, the activity that causes us stress. So we have to, these 3 tests of time really help to kind of clarify this. One is the test of necessity. Do I really still need to do this or not? Is this a waste of my time? If I still need to do it, test of appropriateness. Who should do it? Should I do it? Or is somebody else already developed the talent, ability, and skill and they can do it? But if I'm stuck with it and I don't have that talent, ability, and skill, well, I better get some training if it's appropriate for me to learn it. So test of necessity, do we need to do it or not? And if we need to do it, well, then who's going to do it? And if you need to do it, get the training. And then with the test of efficiency, how can we use technology? How can we fine-tune the process or procedures to streamline the operations so that we kind of have a multiplier factor in the efficiency with the technology of how to get all the work done? And it really helps to kind of funnel things down so you're focusing on the most important and valuable tasks. So here we go. Let's talk about some of these physical remedies to manage the stress. One is to get organized. Now, I don't know if that's going to take 2 hours or 2 days or 2 weeks, but what did our parents used to say? A place for everything and everything in its place. Awfully good advice. Awfully good advice. Now, one of my books on the shelves here on time management by Chris Publications claims we spend 45 minutes a day, personally and professionally combined, 45 minutes a day, just looking for things. Just looking for things. That's 6 work weeks a year, just looking for things. So whether it's your computer files, whether it's your hanging files, whether it's your office, or the stuff that you use most often is most readily available. The stuff you use least often is farther away, so you don't have all the clutter. But I'd like you to take a little bit of time to get organized. Yes, I have it right here. I have it right here, so that you calm the mind. You know you have a certain amount of control of your work environment. And then the proper diet would be the second thing I would suggest. I want you to work into your diet some of those, what do they call them? Fruits and vegetables into your diet. You should always have a very colorful plate, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, where you have a wide variety of proteins and vegetables and fruits. So work on the diet thing a little bit. If you can't, necessarily with your schedule, have a proper diet, make sure you take a supplement, take some sort of a nutritional supplement. I take a nutritional supplement. It's got 57 of something in it for the last 20 years. And I'll tell you what, my headlights are on high beam at 8 o'clock at night. So make sure you work on the diet. Exercise. Now I want to give you the 5 criteria to an exercise program that will work if you put it to work. 5 criteria to an exercise program that will work. Number 1 is it has to be something that causes you to move. That's real important in an exercise program. It just doesn't have the effect if you aren't moving. So it has to be something that causes you to move, something that causes you to breathe deeply so you get the aerobic benefit, something that causes you to bend to put elasticity into the muscles and ligaments. It has to be something you enjoy, and it has to be at your pace. And that's an exercise program that will last a lifetime. I'm not going to ask you to get up every morning and run 3 miles. I have a brother that does. I'll run if I'm real scared, but I don't run for exercise. What I do is I hook up the family's full-size 5-passenger collie and I take her down to the lake. Causes me to move, breathe, bend. How many know what I'm talking about? It's like having a Holstein heifer as a pet. That's the only part I don't enjoy, but it is at my pace. And I'll walk that dog as long as it lives. Kids wanted a dog. I ended up with an exercise program. I'm estimating another 3 years, 8 months. But it does fit my style or fit my lifestyle. Now, you got to be careful with exercise, too. Though you don't get all wound up in some of these fads, I mean, have you seen the new one? There's a popular workout where you crawl like a baby. They claim it shapes your core, shoulders, and arms. I don't know. Have you seen a baby lately? I don't know if it works. I really don't know. Anyway, so exercise, take a massage class, you know, if you can, online. There's plenty of videos for you to get on YouTube of how to release the tension in some of those muscles that get tight. Maybe you can take a community ed class this fall, you know, for $15. Take a partner with you, twice as much fun to figure out ways that you can incorporate massage. I have a friend of mine that's a pilot. He goes in for a massage once a month to relieve some of the tension and stress. He's probably going in once a week now since things have changed so much in the airline industry. So we want to make sure you figure out how you're going to minimize those stress responses when your muscles get so tight. One of those might be simply doing some relaxation exercises. Sometimes it's just doing a little assessment from the tip of your toes to the top of your head. See if you can adjust your feet a little bit to take the pressure off your ankles or your knees. See if you can adjust your posture a little bit to stretch your back gently. Maybe you can let your shoulders drop. Sometimes they'll drop an inch or two if you just let them drop. Let your face sag. It's fighting gravity all day long. You might do some isometrics, you know, do some arm curls, stimulate blood flow to other parts of the body to warm up those muscles, but figure out a little regimen of some relaxation exercises that may help. Do some deep breathing. Now, some people say this is deep breathing. What is that? That's deep sighing. Deep breathing, according to Dr. Bert Decker, is you inhale 5 seconds, hold it 15 seconds, exhale slowly for 10. Inhale 5, hold 15, exhale slowly for 10. So let's live it up. Let's give this a try and see how long that is. So when it comes to that, let's go ahead here. We want to inhale 5. So here we go. Hold it for 15. Exhale slowly for 10. And do that 4 times. Make sure you're sitting down because they get a little lightheaded doing that standing up. But inhale 5, hold 15, exhale slowly for 10. Now the magic of it, it expands our lung capacity to nearly 80%. Gives us the short-term benefit of being a long-distance runner, and you don't have to do all that running. The other thing it does, it takes 2 minutes to inhale 5, hold 15, exhale slowly for 10, 4 times. Gives your heart an opportunity to pump the blood through the system twice. Oxygenated blood is fuel for the brain. You've just gone from unleaded gas to jet fuel. You're quicker thinking, more articulate, more vocabulary available to you, and quicker wit. It also lowers the pitch of your voice, softens the tone of your voice. You sound warm and cooperative, even if you're not. So if you're going to be making a phone call and you know there's going to be a certain amount of tension or stress, inhale 5, hold 15, exhale slowly for 10, dial the number, make the call. If you're going to go into a meeting and you know there's going to be some conflict or tension, inhale 5, hold 15, exhale slowly for 10, open the door and head into the meeting. Now make sure you do it before the meeting, not during the meeting. If you're sitting in the meeting going, people might misunderstand your intentions. Now it will be a stressful day. But use that technique maybe early in the morning, middle of the morning, over lunch, middle of the afternoon, right before you walk in the door at the end of the day. But really work some deep breathing in to your stress management strategies. Do some stretching. Be gentle with stretching, though, if it really is your muscles that get tight. Now, my knot in the neck here, I got to be very careful in how I stretch and be very slow about it. So I go to this side for about 5 seconds, slowly bring my head up so the muscles don't spasm. Go to this side. Oh, this one's kind of tight. Go this way for about 5 seconds. Do that a half a dozen times. Put your chin to your chest. Feel the muscles in the back of your neck. Slowly relax. Put your head back. Some of you might want to go back at an angle rather than straight back, because for some of you, when you go straight back, you'll pass out. But go back and feel the muscles in your throat relax. Do that a half a dozen times. You can also pull your elbows across your chest to stretch those muscles that are getting tight in your back and under your shoulder blades. So work some stretching into your day too. Get out of the rut or routine you find yourself in. Now, wait a minute, Welchie, you said get organized. Now you're saying get out of the rut or routine you find yourself in. Okay, I'll give you a couple of examples on this one. It's pretty simple for me in one of my strategies, and that is I tend to wolf down 1 box of cereal a week. And right now I'm finishing up a box of Cinnamon Toast Crunch. Ooh, that is so sweet. You should really have that for dessert with vanilla ice cream. It's really good, but it's really sweet. Last week I was eating Basic 4, and it's hard to find it on the shelves, but you can order it on the line, 12 boxes at a time. Kind of tastes like silage, but it's supposed to be good for me. And then 3 weeks ago, I was eating something that, some almond nut clusters, had a squirrel on the box, and I kind of wonder if it actually isn't for squirrels, because the roof of my mouth just healed on Tuesday night. It was pretty coarse stuff. But that's how I kind of mix it up a little bit. I don't eat the same thing every morning for breakfast. I kind of live it up with a different breakfast cereal every week. Also, if you've been going out for walks in the evening, go the other way around. It's amazing what you'll see in the backyards of people's houses. Wow, look at that. I didn't even know that was there. But you also, when it comes to getting out of the run routine, you find yourself in, every once in a while, take a different route home. In the wintertime, you might want to let people know that you're going to do that in case you run into some slow traffic or, some slippery roads. But take a different route every once in a while and go, hey, wow, a new holiday station. Oh, a new Quick Trip. Wow, those are nice, and just kind of mix it up a little bit. So you're not driving the same roads all the same time with the same people, the same traffic, the same jam. So you want to make sure you kind of live it up a little bit, get out of the rut of routine you find yourself in. Take some walking breaks rather than coffee breaks. Instead of sitting around drinking coffee and talking smart, smoking cigarettes, eating junk food, go for a walk. Take a couple laps outside or walk down to the corner and back, and just get it. Sometimes we have to get away from things to see it. I don't know when I've been working but when I've been working on a problem, you can't see the forest because of the trees. Trees right here, I can't even see the knothole. And sometimes I need to get out of my office. I just need to get down the hallway or get outside to clear my mind. And when I come back, it just seems a little bit more focused, a little bit clear to me. And sometimes I'll have those aha moments when I'm away from the office. So I want to work in those walking breaks with your family too. Now, don't stink up the dining room table with conflict. Go for a walk. I don't know if you had a dining room table like we had when I grew up. We had a dining room table with the light above the dining room tables on a cord. And I would be sitting in my chair minding my own business. Next thing I'd realize, my dad would have that light over my head and he would be asking me, so kid, how are things going at school? And my response would always be, what have you heard? I mean, it was more like an interrogation than a conversation. So go for a walk. It burns up the adrenaline, burns up the blood sugars, wait for your neighbors, pet their dog, dodge some cars. But you have several minutes to respond rather than react. It takes a lot of pressure. And you want the dining room table to be a place that your family looks forward to sitting down rather than, some place that we receive feedback that isn't necessarily most flattering. So go for a walk to talk about those family issues that may create some tension. And it's amazing how just walking, burning up the adrenaline, blood sugars, and, the deep breathing just seems to give people a chance to collect their thoughts and respond rather than react. Now, use music to your advantage rather than your disadvantage. I don't know what kind of music irritates you, but there's a couple of them. Opera, if I'm on Seek or Scan and hit opera for 3 seconds, that's a long 3 seconds for me. Some real country western music will get to me. Rap music every once in a while, I get tired of that. Our daughters used to like rap music when they were younger, and so I went to my office and I downloaded some lyrics of their favorite songs, and when they wanted to listen to that in the car, I'd sing along with it, and they'd be like, mommy, stop him, so I think parenting is a full contact sport, but so you want to work music into your advantage. And sing too. They say we're happy because we sing. We don't sing because we're happy. It's the breathing, it's the vibrations, it's the thoughts that we have with singing those songs. So let's go back to music here for a second. Now, I like what I do, but I've been doing this for 29 years, and I'm starting this is my first month of my 30th year in the speaking business. And I do like what I do, but I'll tell you what, probably once every, 4 or 5 months or so, I just don't feel like it, okay? So when I'm a half an hour away or 20 miles away, I have a playlist that I listen to. Styx, Van Halen, Cheap Trick, 38 Special, REO Speedwagon, and by the time I get to the location and out of my SUV, I'm like, give me a microphone, give me an audience. But that's not the way my wife wants me to come home at the end of the day. So I have a different playlist I listen to. First 2 songs are Neil Diamond songs because Neil sings in my range, so I croak along with Neil. Then there's a couple Roy Orbison songs, so we try to hit the high notes with Roy. Then there's a couple Larry Graham songs. Wow, what a beautiful voice. And then there's even a Barry Manilow song on there. But anyway, I'm a better husband when I get home, a better father, better listener. So use music to your advantage and sing along with it. If you have a good voice or if you drive alone, we're happy because we sing. So you might want to do that. Hobby is the #1 strategy of Fortune 500 company executives. Now, the key to the hobby is make sure it's significantly different than what you do on the job. So if things aren't going well at work, you can fall back on a different self-concept, still like yourself personally, even if things are a little bit bumpy professionally. And if you have a hobby, you know, take a catalog along, or take your magazine along, or, you know, have a, you know, in your favorites, you know, you can access the website quickly. But, you know, when you're kind of struggling, you can kind of take a look at your hobby from a distance and say, you know, I'm really looking forward to doing that on Saturday afternoon. So not only do you, you know, enjoy it while you're doing it, but maybe you can have that information and access it so you can, when you're under stress throughout the week. Smile and laugh, it releases endorphins. But I also want you to think about it this way. I have a stack of joke books on my nightstand, and I just read a few pages at night, and I'm always kind of amazed how I sleep better. You know, they claim what you read or what you listen to or watch before you sleep causes different dreams while you sleep. And we need 7 hours and 15 minutes every 24 hours so the body can repair and restore itself. I remember we were watching, I don't know if it was Netflix or one of those streaming services, Bloodlines. We tried to watch that, but I tell you, I had so many bad dreams. We had to quit watching that. We never did finish that because it was, I don't know if we had so many family members that were similar or what it was, but well, it was almost like nightmares from watching that. So we quit that. So, you know, you might want to have something that you can read or carry along that causes you to just laugh or smile, just create a little bit of lightheartedness. That would always be nice. And then date night or take scheduled time off. And we're going to approach this 2 ways. Just have something in your calendar you're looking forward to. And if you feel kind of trapped at home, you know, popcorn in a movie, you know, it doesn't have to be anything big. Maybe now that, you know, restaurants are opening up, you can, you know, go to a restaurant outside, you know, get a reservation. I guess that's going to maybe be required for a while since seating is limited, but we should have something in our calendar we're looking forward to at least once a month or so. And then taking scheduled time off. I was out at the farm for Father's Day. My dad's 94, he'll be 95 in August. He looks pretty good, you know, still getting in and out of tractors and trucks. He's had, you know, quite a bit of scheduled time off. Probably 20 years ago, he sold all the livestock. Now they just have a dog, you know, and he goes out in the spring and works the land and plants and then goes to some county fairs. There aren't as many this summer. And then in the fall, goes out and harvests. But he has a lot of time off. And I think he looks great. My father-in-law, though, worked a long time and long hours and tried to save up all his vacation. You know, they're almost 15 years apart, but you would not be able to tell who was older. I think my dad looks great. I think my father-in-law looks kind of tired. So if you have vacation days, you have personal holidays, you know, take them when you need them. If you take care of yourself, you'll be able to take care of your customers and your colleagues too. So let's take a look at some psychological remedies because you might not be able to perform all those physical remedies at work. So one of these is to think of yourself as being self-employed. And if you've been working remotely, it probably feels more like it than ever. But also I want you to think about being self-employed as an independent contractor this way. Put out your hands like a scale. What are my talents, abilities, and skills? What are they willing to pay me for those today? Seems fair. But the more talents, abilities, and skills I develop, the more valuable I am for this organization or the others that I support, you know, our professional associations. And one of the kind of, I guess, hidden benefits of the pandemic is it really forced us to become more creative in our thinking, more creative with how we use technology, more creative in how we provide customer service. So, you know, let's keep going with the innovation. Let's keep doing the research and development. Let's, you know, kind of become a good failer, you know, ask questions, make suggestions, fail, but really see yourself as being self-employed. When I give seminars on change, I suggest to people to really see and think of yourself as a consultant. I love being a consultant. Walk into organizations and I say, what you're doing there, I've seen other organizations do it differently. You might want to consider that. What you're doing, I used to do that job, but if I did it like this, it would save me about 5 minutes every hour. And I don't know, you might want to give that a try. What you're doing over there, stop that, and then I'd leave. So I care, but not that much. And sometimes when you're on a team or when things are changing and are in flux, you know, you can kind of step back. And if you're an outside consultant, what would you suggest? What would you recommend when it comes to equipment, underutilized assets, how we share information, how we have meetings, all of our events and volunteers, all those activities? What would you do differently? And make those suggestions. I'd like you to continue your education. We know the more you learn, the more you earn. Couldn't care less about that. I'm just amazed the difference a good book makes in our decision making. So you might want to, you know, have a library that you leave as a legacy. Set long-term goals. When I first started speaking for a living back in 1991, we used to ask people to plan their life in decades. What are you up to for the next 10 years? What are you up to for the next 20, 30, 40 years? Then if you get a little bit behind, you'll always have some time and you have the confidence that you'll be able to catch up. So I'll tell you what, setting long-term goals puts you at peace. But I tell you, many of my clients, you know, they're thinking at the end of the month, or they're thinking at the end of the quarter, or the farthest I can get them to think in their calendar, or, you know, it's the next 12 months. But I'd like you to think a little bit longer than that. More of a life script rather than such a tight goal that we feel that pressure. Put together a past accomplishments reference from when you're a little bitty snot-nosed kid till now. Any award, certificate, plaque, trophy, ribbon, acts of kindness, volunteerism, anything you should have been pat on the back, job well done. And I want you to put together that list. And you don't put it outside your office and people have to look at it and read it and see how cool you are, or send it as an email attachment. Take a look at this and then we'll talk later today. It's just for your eyes only. Put together that past accomplishments list with 25 past accomplishments. Because the next time you face a challenge or an obstacle, you review that list, you see 25 success stories where you're the hero or heroine in every one of them. And you'll see this is just an opportunity to get something else on that list. So it gives us tremendous confidence that, you know, this obstacle or challenge, it's really an opportunity for us to take that history of success and put it into action. So put together a past accomplishments reference. Now, when I give seminars on self-esteem and resilience, I'll have people fill that thing out completely before they leave the seminar. And I'll catch them at the door and I say, can I see your past accomplishments reference? I have it done. Can I see it? Oh, you have 23. Oh, I hated doing this. Like, you put that down as 24. And then for 25, put down that you got 24, you know, and then I let them go. But I really want them to come up with as many as possible. Now, over the years, I've run into people that attended that seminar and they'll say to me, hey, kid, I'm up to 175. And I said, well, good for you. I'm up to 205. That's a weight joke. I don't know if they're funny anymore. But I said, what are you talking about? And they say, those past accomplishments references. You know, I did that 25 in class, but things kept happening to me, or I remembered things, and I kept writing them down. I have 7 pages of them. And they weren't arrogant. They weren't conceited. They were just confident. And you could see they were kind of happy. This is kind of the bottom line. Because really what we're talking about is self-esteem. You know, we spend 24 hours a day with ourselves. We could just as well enjoy it. Okay? So I would like you to give yourself the credit that you deserve, that you've had this long list of history of success. So when we do this, it also gives us a chance to practice number 5, positive visualization. Instead of imagining things are going to go bad, imagine things are going to turn out just fine. Years ago, I came across a study that claimed human beings are successful 95% of the time, that 19 out of 20 times what you attempt in your life, you do attain. Could you imagine running out to the casino and hitting the buttons and pulling the arm on the one-armed bandit that 19 out of 20 times it would pay out? Well, that's how you'd spend your time. That's how you'd invest your resources. That's the return you get on yourself. Invest in your training, invest in your education, develop another skill, get another certification. There's always a return on that investment. But anyway, you know, positive visualization, instead of imagining things are going to go bad, imagine things are going to turn out just fine. And often people say, well, I really can't do that. Really? You know, on your way to work, have you ever thought about a difficult discussion or a critical conversation that you're going to have with someone, and you kind of rehearse it in the car on the way, saying, well, I think I'll say this. No, then they'll respond to this. So I think I'll probably say this instead to start the conversation, see how they respond. And yeah, that's all positive visualization. If I imagined you to picture your home, you can see it. Picture your car, you can see it. You know, picture your family, they're there, you can see it. So positive visualization. Remember, the mind has a hard time telling the difference between what is real or what is well imagined. So just go ahead and use that to your advantage. Positive affirmations. Pay yourself a compliment if no one else is. Say, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me. You keep saying things like that, you'll be a U.S. Senator someday. But I'd like you to put together honest, positive things about yourself that you can remind yourself routinely or regularly throughout the day. So some positive affirmations would be great. A mental vacation. Let's go with this one for a second. Sometimes, you know, because of the pandemic, we can't go to the places we used to enjoy, but close your eyes and maybe you can go to the park or go to the river, go to the lake, or go to the golf course. I always play my best round of golf in my mind. I'm hitting them straight down the fairway. My approach shots are sticking on the green. I'm putting like a madman. So I don't have to deal with the traffic. I don't have to pay the green fees. I don't have to worry about the weather. It's a perfect day in my mind when I play golf, when I take a mental vacation. But you can go to the beach, you can go to the cabin, wherever it is that you feel peace. close your eyes and vividly imagine that and go on a mental vacation. A couple of times as I've been presenting, I took a little trip. I don't know when you notice that, but I want you to think about what are those areas of geography or the activities that you enjoy that you can just imagine doing it. Blood pressure will drop, heart rate will slow, stress will dissipate. Number 8 is I'd like you to alter your interpretations and get in the habit of saying at least. Say at least, because it could always be worse. So let's say you're driving around this weekend and you come up to an intersection and you stop at your red light and you're sitting at your light turns green, you enter the intersection, someone blows through their red light, you jam on your brakes. Whew, at least they didn't hit me. Maybe things aren't going well at work right now, but you think, at least I have a job. Maybe things aren't going well in your marriage right now, but at least I have a job. I mean, if they're still throwing dishes at you, you still have a chance. So you want to make sure that you have something that you think of that could be worse, and it really could for all of us. The next idea is I'd like you to understand your emotions so you can respond appropriately. Now, I'd like you to think of this kind of like a funnel. All information simply comes through our senses. It's what we see, it's what we read, it's what we hear. But based upon that, and the more information we can get in there, the better. But all information simply comes through our senses. It's just raw data. No meaning's been applied to it. Now, the second step is critical, which is interpretation. And interpretation is the intellectual question, why? Why did this person say this? Why did this person do this? Why did this circumstance occur? But you try to interpret the situation and the people within it. So gather all that information through your senses, and then interpretation is why. Why would a person say this? Why would a person do this? How did this happen? Now, what that will do is it'll create a feeling. Thoughts create feelings. And if I feel that way, it kind of traps us or limits our options in what we would say or what we would do when we feel like that. But as professionals, you still need to express, and hopefully it's your best option. So let's take a look at this little story here for a second, because we can do it, really understand our emotions, crafting the message and also responding to it. So here's a little story. A couple drove down a country road for several miles, not saying a word. An earlier discussion had led to an argument, and neither of them wanted to concede their position. I've been in that car before. Now, understanding our emotions and responding appropriately, this, crafting the message, this is the problem. As they passed a barnyard, mules, goats, and pigs, the husband asked sarcastically, relatives of yours? Okay, that's not a good start. Well, and the response, could have been different too. Yep, the wife replied, in-laws. So the person kind of initiating the conversation again and the person responding to it, both had an option of understanding their emotions and responding appropriately. But sometimes when we're under stress, skin's a little thin, temperatures, are a little bit hot, our fuses are a little bit short, and sometimes people get defensive or take things personally. So you got to really think about your emotional intelligence, self-awareness, and then self-regulation, because the impact it has on others that you work alongside. I would like you to, next week, if there's something bugging you, or maybe later today or tomorrow, to just, you think about things that, are bugging you. I'd like you to write down, what's bugging me? So I'd like you to write down, what's bugging me? So then you write down, this person bugs me. I don't like this situation. Well, now I think about it, I don't like that person either. And I don't like these circumstances. So you write down everything that's bugging you. Then what I want you to do is put a big old C in front of those things that are controllable. You have some impact, some influence, you can do something about it. Put a C in front of those things that you have some impact, some influence. Get on a list of things to do today and get it done. Now, if there's anything else left on that list, you've just declared those uncontrollable. That's just the way it is. Those are the cards you're dealt. That's how they played out. Life's tough for everybody. Get over it. How'd you like to work with me every day? But sometimes we just have to stop and ask ourselves the question, is this controllable or not? And if it is controllable, schedule that meeting, make the phone call, send the email, get people on a virtual, meeting, but, take action, that will minimize the stress. And if there's some stuff on that list that's uncontrollable, you're just gonna have to take a big old dose of acceptance. Sometimes it's kind of bitter, but, that's our other option. Quality time. Now, before the pandemic, quality time, I would suggest is, it's time spent with your family and your friends. But I'll tell you what, the the last 90 days, you probably spent quite a bit of time with your family. And now you're maybe starting to see some of your friends. But quality time. Now, let's take a look at this for a second. Right before the holidays, I came across this study. A survey revealed that people drink twice as much alcohol during the holidays. They also spend twice as much time with their families. Is that just a coincidence? I don't know. So now when I talk about quality time, yeah, it's still time with family and friends, of course. We want to, have that social life and support system. But also, time just for you to idle down. Where can you go that there's a quiet place, a certain amount of silence that you can just idle down and connect with yourself? Now, in the old days when my wife and I used to buy old houses and fix them up, had a big old Victorian home. On the second floor was a big old clawfoot tub that I'd fill with piping hot peaches and cream bubble bath, and I'd slip in there for 20 minutes and relax, pull the plug, fight the current, get some more exercise in, shower off, and away I'd go. That was my quality time. I wouldn't let that dog in there. I wouldn't let that cat in there, but that was my quiet time. Now, I have a hot tub in the backyard because I don't have a clawfoot tub anymore. So I come through the house and peeling off clothes, I get in that hot tub and it's like I'm 1,000 miles away. I fight the current in the hot tub for one round and I feel 10 years younger when I get out of there. And I have a lot of creative ideas when I'm in there with the bubbles and the sounds and just looking out into the trees. I love that. So I don't think I'll live without a hot tub in the future. So quality time, you got to figure out where can you go to just sit where you can idle down and relax. I'd also like you to consider give yourself a nickname that you like, not the nickname other people have given you. Give yourself a nickname that you like. Now, my nickname for me is Welchy. I don't know what it is. Whenever I call myself Welchy, I feel a little bit better. And I never realized how powerful this was, this little psychological pick-me-up with a nickname, until the first time I worked with the Department of Corrections. And I don't know if some of you have family members that are correctional officers, but I'll tell you what, the first time I worked with them, I thought they ate their young. We did a 2-day lockdown at the St. Cloud Penitentiary, and I was at the Kelly Inn giving a seminar on change to 400 correctional officers, and they didn't want any. And so I'm going up to the front of the stage. I'm saying to myself, come on, Welchy, let's go. Come on, Welchy, let's go. So if the presentation stunk, well, that was Welchy's fault, not mine. Now, I'm not suggesting you should have a split personality, but you can manage a lot of stress if you do. So give yourself a nickname that you like. And where you incorporate this is if you need to make a phone call and you know it's not going to be pleasant, just say, come on, Welchy, let's go, and you dial the number. Of course, you'd call yourself something else. Or a meeting that you're going to attend where it's going to be some lively discussion, just say, come on, Welchy, let's go, and take action. It just gives you a little bit more of a psychological pick-me-up, a little bit more courage, I think, and I think we have to sometimes, create a little distance between our professional life and who we are personally. And I think giving yourself a nickname that you like just gives you a little bit of that cushion so we can, if there is some information that we receive that's not so flattering, we can absorb the shock. Number 13 is contingency plans. Don't hang your heart on one solution to the problem. Always have a handful of other options that you're willing to accept. They may not be perfect, but maybe good enough will be fine today. That perfectionism thing is certainly something that creates stress for us too. Perfectionism, let's talk about this for a second, because I think perfectionists put a lot of pressure on themselves, or type A personalities too can kind of go along with this. The three main reasons we, deal with perfectionism is that we don't want to do something wrong, catastrophic fantasy. Some people call it catastrophic failure, but you didn't do anything, okay? So it's a fantasy. And so we have to make sure we take action, that one. Sometimes it's overgeneralization. The first time we do something, it doesn't go very well. Maybe we have a new software that we need to use, and the first time we used it, we made a handful of mistakes. We think, oh, I'm so stupid. No, you're not stupid. You wouldn't be in the position you're in if you were stupid. And then the second time we, fire up and use the technology, we make another mistake. You think, oh, I'll never get it. Actually, it's getting better. And we don't notice, the last half a dozen times that you've used that technology, it's gone really well. But that initial impact or the initial experience you had that was so negative makes us reluctant to do it. So overgeneralization can happen. That's why I'm surprised I make my living as a professional speaker. 40 years ago when I was in high school, I was in a play called The King and I, and there's lines in the play where the king shouts at the school teacher, if I shall sit, you shall sit. Well, guess what I said opening night? 175 people in a little theater in St. James. Woo! Pam Hansen tried to stay in character. She had tears running down her cheeks. I stormed off the stage. Play was sold out the next 3 nights. But whenever I go back to a class reunion, and I'll have a handful of students that will say, "Do you remember in the class play, The King and I?" Yeah, I do. Every time I talk about perfectionism and overgeneralization, it still haunts me. Oh, I slow it down on those words. And then when it comes to perfectionism, some things need to be done perfectly. Everything else doesn't. I got to tell you, I did give a perfect presentation one time. It was back in 1993. It was out there in Maplewood, North St. Paul, Oakdale School District. It was a 3-hour seminar on interpersonal communication skills. I never got tongue-tied for 3 hours. Everything I wanted to say, I remembered. Everything that I said was supposed to be funny. I was hilarious. 30 people, 30 evaluations, 30 tens. It was perfect. I remember walking out of the awning at the Days Inn, the Maplewood Inn, out by the Maplewood Mall, and I took a look at the sky to see if there's a cloud in the sky, thinking, wow, for sure I was going to get hit by lightning. I don't know if I had watched Caddyshack too many times or what, but I thought that was going to be it. I looked both ways before I crossed the street. Sure, I was going to get run down in the road. I drove exactly 55 miles an hour on my way home on Highway 36. My hands were trembling. It was so uncomfortable to give that perfect presentation. I make sure it hasn't happened again since. Set your standards low, then you can always overachieve. That's what I say. But you should always have a contingency plan, because it might not be perfect. Even those thoughts or ideas we had that we thought were perfect, it didn't work out when we put them into practice. So I always have a handful of other options. A volunteer, nothing more stress relieving than that, to give away what's a luxury for you that other people actually really, truly need. And then if none of these 29 ideas work, I suggest pray. I call it reverse delegation. Can't handle this one, you can have it back. Don't send me such a big one next time. What were you thinking? But we find that people that have a strong spiritual foundation do not suffer stress at the same intensity as people that do not, because they have this hope or expectancy that things will turn out just fine in the end. So you might want to consider that. Now, here's some bonus strategies. Now, I've been doing quite a bit of reading. They talk about commuting with nature. Then instead of just walking around your neighborhood, see if you can find a path somewhere where you can walk through some woods or walk around a lake or hear the birds, hear the sounds, and experience the smells, all those sort of things. And just kind of, you get a chance to kind of drift away, or get some plants. I do better with perennials outside than I do house plants inside. I always feel a little guilty when I kill a plant, but something about taking care of a living, breathing plant, I guess, or a pet. So next one is get or borrow a pet. If you borrow a pet, you don't have the veterinary expense. And you also occasionally can get by with walking that dog without having to, pick up its poop, so you can either get or borrow. But now they claim the most stressless or the least stressful pet to have is a fish in an aquarium, sitting there, floating around there gently, swimming. And that's supposed to be the bubbler. It's supposed to be the most stress relieving, I don't know. So you can go that route, not too much maintenance and easy to replace a fish. Limit or monitor salt. You don't want to get too carried away with that. Can boost your blood pressure, which then you feel more stressed. Watch some television. I talked about bloodlines earlier. Couldn't hardly sleep at night. So it really be very selective about what you watch on TV and how much time you're going to invest that you could have used in a better way. But if it is something that you watch that you actually feel better, consistently better after you've watched it, hey, nothing wrong with that. Just make sure you limit the amount of time. Do some reading, but again, be careful about what you read before you sleep, because it can cause different dreams while you sleep. So have something that, motivates you, creates a little lightheartedness, something that gives you hope, or, lightens the load, but do some reading. Maybe the magical 3 hours before work or after work, you might just incorporate a few minutes. The other day I was giving a webinar on work and life balance. We took a look at 7 different core areas of a being, our career, our financial life, education, social life, health, education. And anyway, we said, to get your life back in balance, I always have recommended that you just spend 10 minutes in each of the 7 areas of what makes you a human being, and place things in different areas of your home or in your office where you just get these 10-minute connections with the other parts. And then, in a week, assess, did I spend too much time, too little time, and modify it. But over a couple of months, if you just do 10-minute increments, maybe you're going to have to start, with 5 areas of your life and just 10 minutes a day on one of them. But just try to create some balance. And reading is a great way to provide that balance that's low cost and gives you a chance to kind of experience that without too much, investment of time. Monitor your mood and attitude. Every once in a while, check in with yourself. How am I? How am I feeling? What am I thinking? How am I doing? How stressed am I? Just kind of monitor yourself and be a little bit more aware where you've about had it up to here. You remember we were talking about the 3 stages of stress. It's kind of like this in our life. You know, if you're driving down the road in your car or truck and a red light comes on in the dash of the car, not a yellow light, a red light. Now, what should we do? We should pull over to the side of the road, shut the automobile or truck off, and have it towed somewhere and have it repaired. But what do we do? Sometimes we pull over to the side of the road, we roll down the window, sounds all right, you know, sniff around, smells okay, well, put it in gear and off we go. Or else we pull over the side of the road, we look at that red light, we sniff around, we listen, sounds all right, smells all right. Man, that red light's irritating. So we paw around and we find some electrical tape, put that over the light so we don't have to look at that light, and then put it in gear and off we go. Or else we pull over the side of the road, we put down the window, we listen, we sniff around, we can't find the black electrical tape, so we find a hammer and we go, bam, 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 knock the red light out with a hammer. Well, that seems silly, doesn't it? But that's exactly what we do when it comes to stress. It's about 10 o'clock in the morning and I have a headache. Has anybody got some ibuprofen around here? I've got a headache, you know? And we keep going through the day. Or maybe we have a tight back or tight muscles. Anybody got some Aleve? I got some muscle spasms there, you know, or they get, hurry it up, you know, we get kind of grumpy or grouchy. So we take some Aleve or something and kind of like putting, you know, electrical tape over it. Then if we have a real bad week, we'll go to happy hour on Friday and knock it out with a hammer. So what I'd like you to do instead is to recognize those red lights or yellow lights and get them from red to yellow so we don't create so much damage in our life. So those are the suggestions I would make on that. So I'm going to send these slides to Hale and Scott, and so you have access to these. And what I'd like you to do is, you know, collect a handful of these ideas that we've shared this morning, and to just take a minute at the beginning of the day and just review those that you believe are actually strategies psychologically and physically that you would incorporate in your life. Because in 1 minute, I can change my attitude. In that minute, change my entire day. Might change your entire life because you'll respond differently to certain conversations and not react, you know, when we are under that stress. So I'd like you to create more of a lifestyle and how you dovetail these strategies into your day in, day out activities. Also, if I was an actor, I get paid to play a role. At work, we get paid to play a role. Let's say I didn't make my living giving speeches and seminars. Let's say I made my living as an actor, and instead of this being a webinar, this was a Shakespearean play, and I'm an actor in that play. But I don't want to do it today. You know, I don't want to put on the little booties. I don't want to put on the frilly shirt. I don't want to bound across stage. You've got $50 tied up in your ticket, and I'm on stage doing this. To be or not to be, that's the question. Where art thou? Would you feel like you got your money's worth? No, you demand your money back. If I was an actor, I get paid to play a role. At work, we get paid to play a role. And your role might be now as a leader in your contact center is to be the person that manages stress and provides support for your coworkers, to be the person that kind of sets the standard of how to adjust and embrace the changes that you face and to put into practice these strategies that we discussed this morning. Now, if you'd like any more additional information, of course, you can contact me at kit@welchland.com. You can also contact me at kit@seminarsonstress.com. Now, if you don't want to send an email, but you just want to access some resources on YouTube, I do have a YouTube channel, YouTube.com/Kit Welchlin. Those are mostly 2.5-minute videos that deal with communication issues, from customer service to communicating change to handling difficult people, gender communication, generational communication, how to work together better as a team. But most of those topics that I speak on, there's 12 episodes, and it's a conversation with an image of me, a struggling image of me, and I try to help him in a couple of minutes. Sometimes he gets it, sometimes he doesn't. That's part of the fun. You can also go to my YouTube channel that deals strictly with seminars on stress. So YouTube.com/seminars on stress. There's about 40 videos there on stress management techniques that are uploaded or available to the public. So you have those resources available to you 24 hours a day, of course, and absolutely free. So I'm going to turn this back over to Hale. And Hale, are there any questions, or Scott, any questions that we should address?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a couple here. First of all, Kit, we have a question around, I think you were talking about, at one point you were talking about kind of responding maybe to an unkind word or conversation with a sympathetic response. And the question from the audience is, is around kind of, isn't that kind of silver lining rather than more of an empathetic response where you would say, okay, that happened, that's okay. It's okay to feel, the way you feel. Is sympathy really better to alleviate stress than empathy? Maybe you can kind of flesh that out a little bit, kind of the difference between the two. And I would just add too, I think that any relationship that we have, in the contact center, especially where we get to know our employees really well, or the people that are working with us, we can oftentimes make lots of assumptions about how they're going to be, and kind of not listen at all, but just simply respond in a certain way because we assume we already understand where they're coming from.
So Hal, can we go back to share screen? Would that be all right with you for me to answer this question?
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm going to try something. I've never done this before. So let's see if I can go to my documents here. Let's see. Let's skip that for a second. I should be able to remember this enough to answer this question. Let's go here. You have it now, don't you, Hal? Okay.
You didn't share your screen.
Yeah. Earlier this week, I had a presentation. I was talking about responding non-defensively to I usually call it criticism, but we were calling it constructive feedback. And the organization I was working with was struggling with people being willing and able to make suggestions or get involved in lively conversations or conflict to talk about things that weren't working, how to provide feedback to get people back on track, that are struggling with technology or the isolation of working alone or some of the PPE things, that they were making adjustments in their process and procedures. So I think there were 8, if I remember correctly, suggestions I made of how to respond. One is to seek more information. So you just ask what or how questions to get more information from them about what they're struggling with. One is the consequences their behavior is having on you, because some people are completely unaware of the impact that it's having on others. When I mentioned earlier in passing about emotional intelligence, before the pandemic, I was delivering a lot of presentations on emotional intelligence because people sometimes are unaware of their own thoughts and feelings and what we call emotional contagion, how people can kind of catch an emotional virus from being around others. And then we talked about you can always agree with them in principle. You're right, I do take this seriously. Maybe I take it too seriously, but it's important work. So you can agree with that, taking work seriously. It was also asking what else is wrong, because sometimes they're talking about a symptom, but they're not talking about the cause. And there's a difference between symptoms and causes. We also talked about doing perception checking, where you repeat or parrot back what they've said, and then you offer 2 possible interpretations of that. So you're saying my email was too formal, or are you saying that the technology is too cumbersome, or which one of those? And usually, 3 out of 4 times we have it a little bit off. They have a different idea than what we thought. So perception checking is awfully powerful in that. You can also ask them about, So anyway, so the difference between sympathy and empathy. Sympathy is where you feel kind of sorry for someone, but you're not really experiencing it. Empathy is where you try to imagine or put yourself in their shoes. Sometimes we call it alter casting. Put yourself in their situation. Who is it they're responding to? Is it a caller, a customer? Is it a family member? Is it the technology? Is it the pressure to get the numbers? Is it that it's a brand new job and they don't feel confident? So, way back when in situational leadership by Paul Hersey, a person's either competent or not, confident or not. So if a person's competent and confident, you just delegate to them. They seem to be able to absorb the shock of change pretty well. Or this person is confident, but they lack confidence. So, is it an unwillingness, or is it a concern that they're anxious, they may not be able to catch on. They are competent, but they don't think they are, So then we just support them emotionally. And, information soothes emotions and anxiety. Talking soothes emotion, not talking stirs trouble. So you got to get in there and talk about, what are you struggling with, or what seems to be your concern, or what's causing you this kind of stress. It could be someone lacks competence and confidence, and you kind of wonder who hired them, where you'd have to invest time and train. but also support them emotionally. You can do this. I believe in you, you know. And then you might have somebody that lacks competence, but they have a lot of confidence. Well, tackle them before they get on the phones or before they run out of your office, because they have all sorts of ideas. They just don't know what they're doing. So then you focus on train. You know, they're all chomping at the bit, you know, to take action, but they don't know what they're doing. So, you know, we kind of have to make those adjustments. But sympathy is where you feel sorry for the situation, feel sorry for them being in that situation, for the event or the circumstances. Empathy is you're really trying to put yourself in their situation and to blend with the emotion. I think empathy, when it comes to listening, is probably the softest skills, but the most powerful. So I can understand how frustrating this would be. Yeah, I am frustrated. Then they feel normal. If you say you shouldn't feel that way, they'll defend themselves. I do feel that way. Because feelings are a fact, they really feel that way. So whether they're feeling joy, if they're feeling sadness, if they're feeling anxiety, or if they're feeling, you know, embarrassed, whatever it might be, you try to blend with the emotion. That's what empathy is all about, so that they feel normal. Then they'll listen to logic. Logic won't necessarily change the emotion that they have, because it makes them believe that you're not really listening. So there's 5 reasons why we listen. One is to advise and evaluate. You should do this. If I were you, this is what I would do. Well, some people don't want to hear that when they're struggling. Sometimes we listen to advise and analyze and interpret. You know what your problem is. You know what's going on here. Well, sometimes I don't want to hear what my problem is either. So there's 3 other ones where you ask what, and how questions. What questions you get explanations, you get definitions. How questions, you get examples and descriptions. You can also be reassuring and supportive, where you give them credit for a personal trait or job related skill. I know, you know, I've noticed you really are working hard on this, trying to, you know, get a handle on it, you know, or, you know, you've caught on to things, you know, in the past. I'm sure you'll catch on to this too. So you really try to reassure and support that person emotionally. And then the last reason why we listen is to paraphrase and really try to understand. If I understand you correctly, you're thinking or feeling, because listening and interpretation is only 25% accurate, which means 75% of the time, we have it a little bit off in what they're really thinking or feeling. So the key is to be flexible. I don't think it's either sympathy or empathy, but it's a range of listening skills and asking what or how questions, because there's no wrong answers to what or how questions, and to create that supportive communication environment where the person can be vulnerable enough to tell you what they're really thinking and feeling. But, you know, earlier last week, I was delivering a presentation on how to establish and maintain trust. And one of those is self-disclosure. People need to know you before they'll trust you. You got to have the confidence and the vulnerability to tell people what you really think and how they really feel. Otherwise, you're kind of playing cards with a blind hand. You don't want to know what that person is thinking. It kind of creates some suspicion, or kind of creates a certain amount of misunderstanding, you know, naturally. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
Thanks, Kit.
Yeah.
Amy asks a really good question, and I think that this is common in the contact center space right now. And I'm just going to read her question because she phrases everything really well. Amy says, "I feel like my team is already in the burnout phase. They're such an awesome team, and they've done such a great job during the pandemic that when we continue to be asked to take on more, I try to get additional resources as we're taking on more. Have you had this happen? And what were your top priorities? I already plan on utilizing what you talked about today, but do you have ideas that you can share for prioritizing first?"
Yeah, you know, when it comes to burnout, you kind of have to work it in reverse order. So you got to kind of provide resources, or provide information, or provide some sort of philosophy or series of phrases or philosophies that restore confidence, restores that capability that everybody has. So remember, spiritual fatigue was a sense of hopelessness and helplessness. What's the use? Thoughts of escape. You know, they've run out of energy. You know, when we're going through change, motivation will sometimes drop. Anxiety will rise about 50%, 3 times the absentee rate typically under tremendous change, because they just can't gut it out. They don't want to deal with it. So we need hopeful phrases or philosophies. We need to, I don't know, put it in an email, or it's something that everybody gets a little note. You know, we got to feel connection with the organization. We got to feel connection with each other. We got to feel connection with the values and virtues and principles of the organization. So we got to kind of make sure that the messages we send out, whether they're text messages or emails or, you know, virtual meetings, that we have something of hopefulness first. That's kind of the priority. And then people start to, feel like they have more control. They feel like they have more confidence, and then they'll start to work their way back into, the psychological fatigue. They'll become more focused. They'll feel like I can finish this. I can get my hands on this. And what usually happens is people rush through it too quickly, and then they say, I'm gonna start an exercise program too, and then, then they just slide back down. But that's how you got to do. You got to flip that upside down. Provide hopeful, positive, encouraging statements to give them the hope or to give them the faith in themselves that they'll be able to master this or get through it. And sometimes it might be just providing them the history of their success. So you might put together the past accomplishments. Can you believe it? Over the last 90 days, what we've done this, yay, and celebrate all those successes. And then every little incremental success we need to support and praise. Now, when it comes to priorities, that's something that I talk about more in time management than anything else. But that's really having that open conversation about what I call the 4 key elements of time management. One is what's intrinsic importance that everyone agrees. That's why we have a call center. That's what our role is for our internal customers, external customers, to support them. And then communication frequency, face-to-face, over the phone, virtual meetings, text messaging. You got to take a look at how formal and informal all the modes of communication need to be now, and the different settings and circumstances in which you would use those. And then urgency, things that must be done on a certain day at a certain time. Otherwise, there's going to be a penalty or some sort of somebody's going to get yelled at, let's say. And then the last is the ability to delegate. And sometimes, when systems are in flux and people are burning out, we might have to do some horse trading on tasks where someone really would enjoy doing something that you just can't stand to do it anymore. You're so sick of doing it. You've been doing it for 60 days and you just don't want to. So it might be an open conversation of, doing a little mix and match on some of the work. So it's more of an activity than feeling like work. So you can, and somebody might, or give them something new to do, or, it gets them out of their rut and they feel like they're growing or developing a new skill. So kind of mixing it up that way can help too. But it was intrinsic importance. These, this is, the values and principles is why we're, do this. And then the communication frequency and the mode of communication you're going to use, the sense of urgency or something that actually has a deadline date. And then can you delegate in some way or mix and match those tasks so it creates some more new interests or reignites the excitement about the job.
Great. Awesome. Scott, I know that you had a couple of questions as well. Why don't you go ahead?
Scott Current has questions?
Yes.
Uh-oh. Okay. You're not going to unmute him?
Scott, you got to unmute.
Sorry. So Kit, what recommendations do you have if you're feeling anxious about returning to work and your boss is acting with a tone of bravado, kind of like your alter ego is what I'm thinking in your videos, such as, hey, we're returning to the office,
yeah,
but you know what? I understand if you're anxious about it, that's okay, and it makes a person feel uncomfortable in that, hey, I'm left out, everybody else is doing it, that kind of an attitude. They feel, it makes a person feel anxious and, doesn't want to be left out. What kind of recommendation do you have to handle that type of a situation?
Yeah, I've always believed, thanks, Scott. That's a great question because I was just working with a housing authority and, some of their residents have no concern about the pandemic or, COVID-19, and some residents are highly anxious about it. And, so what we talked about is a combination of 2 things. There's 4 intentions we all have at work: to get things done, and to get things done right. If we're going to do it, we could just well do it well. To get along, and then to get or give appreciation. And when those intentions aren't fulfilled, people exaggerate their behavior to get something else. So when people want to get it done right, get it done, and if you're just not going to get done, they become more controlling. And it might be those kind of statements like that where they're trying to manipulate or trying to influence you in a way that seems a little bit unfair because there, could and should be a genuine concern for our health. Get it done right. And if a person fears it's not going to get done right, they exaggerate their behavior, become more perfectionistic. Sometimes it's getting along, the relational aspect, because work is a task event. It's also a social event. And if people feel left out, they'll become more approval seeking. And that's when we might go ahead and go back to work, even though we were reluctant because we want to get along, was it go along to get along or get along, go along, whatever. But we really didn't want to. So sometimes we'll, try to win approval and do something like that, and then give appreciation. And if we're not getting that, we're going to get some attention around here. So it could be that person saying those comments is making you feel or belittling you, or, could be, they want to get things done. They're not quite sure if that's getting done remotely. It might be they want to get things done right. And they believe in a funny sort of way with their sarcastic comments or snide remarks or belittling comments that you'll get in shape and, get in line. So what we did is we took those 4 concepts of get it done, get it run right, get along, get appreciation, and we put it into a communication construct called the SEER method of explanation. And it's SEER, where you make a statement, you explain it, you give an example, and you restate it. So the example I used was, if we don't do that, make a statement, explain it, give an example, restatement, it can cause people to be confused about what we're doing and anxious. So I use a little story that I went into the grocery store and I told them I was looking for I wanted to know if there's any vegetables or fruits that had been sprayed with pesticide because they were for my wife. And I should be getting done with the police interviews here later this week. Instead, I should have started out, statement. I would like to buy fruits or vegetables that have no pesticide on them, and explain that, like anything like a herbicide or a pesticide, to kill the weeds or to kill the insects, and then give examples. My wife, doesn't want to endlessly be cleaning and washing fruit and vegetables before we can use them. And she'd rather have something more organic where a bug has been sitting on there eating it too, or something. So, and so that's what I'm looking for. My wife would like fruits and vegetables without any pesticides. Then, the communication is so clear. We're going to finish this on, this task or project ahead of schedule. Well, everybody's wondering, well, what was the schedule? So explain that. We were going to finish it June 30th. We're going to have it done by June 28th. Oh, how come? So you give examples. Well, it arrived earlier, shipped faster than we expected. The installation went perfectly, and with the first pilot we ran, there weren't any flaws, so we're good to go on Monday. So if we can, so we'll be finishing 2 days early. So if you provide that kind of a SEER method of explanation, so if it was PPE, for personal protective equipment, that's like masks and, face guards and gloves, and, so you explain the pieces of it. Then you say, so here's an example of what we're going to do. I will text you when I arrive. So if you would like to leave the building, I will, then come in. Would be comfortable 15, 20 minutes after you leave. And so you have a conversation about the process, give the examples or describe how it's going to unfold. And so that's how we're incorporating PPE and how we're providing the services. So when the person is putting that pressure on you, it feels like, or manipulating you to come into work and you're still really reluctant, you say, let's take a look at, I believe I'm still getting my work done. I think I'm still hitting the numbers, and I think the customer satisfaction and the times and however we're measuring my performance, appears to be right on target. So we're not only getting it done, we're getting it done right. And I do miss everybody, and I would love to be there and work side by side with you, because I really do enjoy the, kind of the camaraderie and the connection. And however, I still am quite concerned about, the pandemic, and I have family members that, maybe, are, well, what's the word for that? What's the physical word for that? Where they have pre-existing conditions. And well, I really appreciate that you have the courage and the fortitude to go to work. I'm just not quite there yet. So you hit all 4, what I call the 4 bases. I'm getting it done. We're getting it done right. I miss you guys, and I'd love to be there with you. And I appreciate that you're able to do it. I'm not quite there yet. And then it answers all those questions. Then people won't exaggerate their behavior, become more manipulating or controlling. They won't become more perfectionistic. They won't become more approval seeking or demanding attention. So we kind of got to blend some of that together, but hang in there. But get it done, get it done right, get along, get appreciation. Have comments for all 4 of those things, and that'll back them away.
Fabulous. Fabulous. Thank you, Kit. I know we're over time, and appreciate it. Fabulous job today. We look forward to you speaking at future events with us, and a big thank you to everyone who attended today.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.